Hey, this is Aaron.
And Blake, we're AB Data.
Thanks for walking through this Alteryx Weekly challenge with us.
In this video, we're taking a look at weekly challenge number 237, the Wareki date converter. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, well, I'm going to stick with it the whole way. Be wrong, be confident in my wrong, I suppose. So the Wareki is a Japanese date format that gives us an extra character to signify the era. The eras indicate the emperor at the time, and they impact the year only. We'll see that there are forward slashes in this. Modern Japan, starting in 1868, is in its fifth era. We're going to create a macro that allows us to go from Wareki to date or date to Wareki. So taking a look at our input here, we have some example dates and Wareki dates. We have a little lookup table that defines the dates for each of our eras as well. And then I've got the whole macro built out here that we'll go through kind of tool by tool, but first off, let's look at what it means to make a macro. So I'm going to copy these two text input tools and paste them in another canvas and separate them a little bit. Now, if we look at our workflow configuration, we'll see that this is a standard workflow for now, but I'm going to right click on my text input and convert it to a macro input. And now if I go back to that exact same spot, I'll see that I am dealing with a macro canvas, and this is just a standard macro. So very easy to switch from a standard workflow into a macro. We just have to convert to a macro input or drag one of those tools, an interface tool, onto our canvas. So we are starting with our macro input, where I've renamed the field the map to the field you wish to convert. And then I also have the era definitions in my macro as a lookup table. We'll be using a detour tool to decide if we want to convert either to a date or to a Wareki date, but we'll look at that a little bit further here in a moment, so we'll come back to that. First, we're going to look at converting from a date into a Wareki date. And so we're using a filter first to regex match based on a proper date format. I then have some conditional logic where I'm going to say if the date is in the future of May 1st, 2019, then it's in the Reiwa era, so it's going to be an R. If it's before 1989, then it's going to be an H, before 1926, an S, and on and on. I'm then going to join this in order to get my start date from my little lookup table. So I'm going to use my conditional logic to tag these. I'm also going to go ahead and update this to say greater than or equals to. I guess that these are the dates when those eras started. So we would, if they're equal to, want them to come through properly. Not a problem in this example, but might as well make it right. So we're going to join our data here against our little lookup table. We're also going to take our era definitions and we're going to convert them so that they're in a proper ISO date format. I did a conditional here where I updated the empty to be today's date, but we don't really have to do that. We only need the else statement here where we're going to update our dates from being in a month, day, year format to being in the standard ISO format where we have year and then month and then day. So we're going to tag our start date on here and move on to a formula tool where we're going to start to build our Wareki date format here in our next tool. So we've joined based on the era, we've brought along the start date, and we're going to use this formula to do some of our calculations. And some of these formulas I've broken up, or some of these expressions I've broken up just to make them a little bit easier to follow. So we're going to start by finding what year in the era we are by taking out the 4 first digits from both the start and the date field. And we're going to say the date field, which is going to be in the future, minus the start date plus 1, because our year 0 is going to be plus 1. And then we also want to pad that number. So for example, we have 9 here. In the Wareki date, they have a 0 padded on the front of it. So we're going to pad that with a 0 also. We're going to build up this output date where first I'm going to do my test, which is just my era plus the year. And then I'm going to add that with a slash. I'm going to use a datetime format to pull out the month, and then another slash, and then the day. So we're taking the era plus the year, which I'm calling it test instead of era, and then we're going to have the month and the day added on that as well. And that's done. That's it. We're done for creating our Wareki date. And so now we're going to look at the other side of our output. I'm going to throw on an anchor abbreviation, call this my output from my macro. No big deal, no big change. So I'm going to go ahead and swap my detour so that my data goes to the right now. I am going to give users the flexibility to insert dates where they're either with the slashes, which I think is proper, or not with the slashes, where it's just the letter of the era plus the numbers. So we'll strip out the slashes and then again do a regex match just to make sure that everything comes through. We don't have any normal dates falling through here. We're going to pull out the era so that we can do something very similar to what we did up above, where we can join era to era, and again bring through the start and the end date. I wasn't sure if I was going to need these or not whenever I built this out, so I went ahead and brought them along. I could always go through and clean this out. But really, I don't actually need them too badly. I'm going to start out by pulling out the year, the Wareki year, by pulling the substring from our Wareki date. Then I'm going to go ahead and add these dates together. So I'm going to start with my my start date, and I'm going to add onto that the number of years, which I'm determining as year, but -1. So I'm doing the opposite of what I did before, where I said the number of years +1. This time I'm going to do -1 on my difference in the years. And I'm just going to build up this date. So I'm going to go in and pull out my month and my date, and then move on to the detour out and push all of our information out. Now, we are giving our users the ability to either select if they want to convert from Wareki to date or from date to Wareki. So we're using a radio button alongside a detour tool. The first radio button is just saying, let's go ahead and update our detour using the radio button. So update this value where it says false. That's going to allow us to convert Wareki to date. For converting date to Wareki, it's going to take a little bit more work. We're actually going to have to come in here and we're going to have to update the value. So if this is selected, if number 1 is selected, then true, otherwise false, and then end if. So we're saying swap our detour if this button is selected. The other one doesn't even actually have to be hooked up, I don't think. Really, because it will follow the default path. So I don't think that we actually even need that, but that's okay. We'll leave it there. So let's go ahead and go test this macro out now. So I want to take my macro and I'm gonna save it and go back over to my challenge 237, and I'm gonna insert the macro. So I want to go insert after, and it looks like I'm having some trouble here. Oops, let's try one more time to pull this through. Apologies. I think that I was just too far on my screen before. There we go. We want to insert this macro and hook it up to our input. We do need to choose the field that we want to map to. I'm allowing my users to do this. And first, I want to go from Wareki to date. So I'm going to grab a join tool and just make sure that this matches Alteryx's provided output. So I'll use a select tool so that instead of being a date, this field can be a string. It's just a little mechanical thing. I want to join output date to date. Hit the run button. I see I have 5 records coming in from both sides, 5 records going out, nothing falling out of the join, so we are all good.
Thank you for learning with us today. Good luck on your Alteryx journey.
For more information on custom training, managed service automations, and more, please visit our website at abdataconsulting.com.